Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another session of Cube EduTour live chats. This is number 28, Jugalbandi series number 9. Here's my friendly neem tree miswak that I was using just a few minutes to sharpen up my smile. And here's our book for today. If you want information on either of these two, fantastic book on the history of Sindh, locally written narrative, not imported, not colonial, and any information on my fabulous, fantastic, better than toothpaste, neem tree miswak, hit me up. Jean Gardner is here. I'm going to say hello. Wa alaikum salam, Jean. Wa alaikum salam. This is fantastic. Where is this incredible woman? So, hola.
Whoop.
Hi.
Hello. Hello. You look like you're
Hi
chewing
there.
on a cigar.
I wish, but close enough.
Aye. So how's everything there?
There is no end to the madness. There we go.
Yes.
So I thought I'd introduce our audience to another dear friend of mine. You've already been introduced to him. This is my neem tree miswak that has many a time confused the visitor to this region and made him believe that we were chewing on barbaric pieces of stick and so uncivilized because we didn't, when in fact this is, these in my teeth look like they do because I use this much more than I do toothpaste. And you also use a neem tree toothpaste. So, there is civilization. Voila.
It comes,
So
civilization.
see the impact.
Yeah. I mean, the closer you get to the rawness, the closer you get to the living source, like the tree, then you have civilization. Not a plastic
Absolutely.
toothbrush. No.
So, Jean, I think you should tell us a story today.
Aha. Well, aligning stories. And
time for a story.
Yeah, there's a hidden message in that name. And I might tell that story with your permission.
Please.
Because it's a message from you
that's a fact.
To me. And I can pretend, oh, he wants me to talk about Humpty Dumpty, who fell off the wall.
Yes.
And all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put him back together again. Okay, that's where we are. I think we agree on that. However, it's a story from my culture. And when you say align stories, I think you're subtly, but not so subtly, suggesting that the alignment is out of balance. And it's you who are putting a lot in, and I don't speak Urdu. I don't write Urdu. I haven't been to all the places.
You will.
I will. But I haven't been to the places you have. But you've been to the places, some of the important places, not all of them, that I've been, like New York City, Santa Fe, London, Europe. So aligning stories is your nudge which is really pushing me off the precipice, to get with it, to be able not to know what exactly you have stored in your body, because stories impact our body and they enter in and become that embodied wisdom that I treasure so much. I know you're not saying align. Align means align. A new word, L-I-N-E. So I looked it up in Sanskrit. So I do have that source, which goes back to your part of the world, to the subcontinent. And lo and behold, those people who study ancient languages don't point to Sanskrit as the beginning. There's some mysterious source that at least the Sanskrit scholars I have looked at, they don't know what it is. So there's a mystery where all the languages that we know have some relationship. All the sound, these are sounds that people are saying. So align literally means in Sanskrit, align, and then the story. And I was shocked because I know the Latin origin of story, which is the one I was talking about, to store in your body, to store your food, the nutrition, the idea of nourishment. But in Sanskrit, the origin of the word story is to see. I was just amazed. So it's a line to see. So I see your invitation by calling this aligning stories, but then asking me to tell a story, that it's a call to align. Align is a guide, to guide us so we can see. And at this point, the story that I am experiencing, because I do catch a glimmer in the light from the crack in the universe, that to see is to reach beyond, for me, not to take a walk like you and Nur did, but to get into a spaceship, the Egyptian equivalent of the ships buried with the pharaoh, and get to the source. And I'm feeling that the story, the line to see, whoops, aha, my phone is always rebelling when it gets too much.
Your phone is ready to fly before the issue. The phone is ready to go. It's got
I know, it's like this is not seeing with the eyes, and
yes,
going on the ship, the airship, the spaceship, we call it, what travels through space. And space in the ancient Sanskrit understanding is the nothingness, the void. So there's no seeing, but boy, do I want to get on that spaceship and I want to walk with whatever's up there and come back and continue the story that you and I are nourishing each other with. And at this moment in this live chat, oh, and I see I have a light over my head. I got to keep this lined up here. This light over my head. I did not plan this. That this story.
Like a halo.
I know. It's like, oh, yes. It's really angels I'm talking about. Yes. That it is playful. It is unexpected. And I have no idea what the end of the story is. Your turn to tell a story.
I think, why does one need to come back? So I think that for me would be the first question, because in any story that we read or we listen to, experience, if it is with us in our bodies, in our skin always, with us throughout, like a tattoo, like that light yesterday reflecting the crescent onto my heart, that's a story that I will never come back from. So I'm not sure if coming back is something that really ever happens. If that story leaves an imprint, or it leaves some kind of a scent of its presence, having wafted by you and left some of that on your being while you are being, just being, we don't come back. So I would say that if Khufu's boat, we can steal from the pyramid where it's in a museum and go on that same journey around the sun and back like he did, I'm not sure there's a back. The only thing that comes back is the vessel. So the book will come back and go into the shelf. The music will come back and go into its file, into its CD, into its LP case. But the story, we don't come back from. It stays with us. And we are a conglomeration of these stories. And, the reason I asked you about tell us a story, because I've been thinking about this, the story about the movement of the solstice happening behind me, and my ability to see it through the lens of this very simple, very archaic device as far as the celestial beings are concerned. This is just kind of as irrelevant as we are. And yet it captured this fragile moment of that spectacular alignment which the Egyptians were celebrating and building monuments with, and the Mayans did it, and the people doing the Jantar Mantars in India did it. All of these astrologers were studying this, so it's not a lightly taken alignment. And I think our stories are experiences, right? They're experiences that we share. So there's no really, I just thought that what story, we've looked at the word history, and I've taken history out and say, okay, there's a story. What is that story? So the Latin, again, fails me, because the Latin says it's a bucket. It's a place to store items. It's a box. And you just think, oh my God, for heaven's sake, what were you people on? Like, a story is a lot more than just Pandora's box that opens and a genie comes out to do a belly dance number for you. There's a lot to it. The genies are always the same. They're all in these see-through harem pants, and they're all like doing these stupid jigs. So the fact that it's just an archival space, it's a repository, I think does the performance and the experience and the memory creation, the architecture of creating those memories that become a part of your skin. They become tattoos, whether you like it or not. that's not just a box. That's a completely holistic experience. I mean, Khufu, when he went on this journey to the sun and back, was following a story that he believed in, and millions of Egyptians believed in, thanks to him. That's not just a bunch of things inside a box, you know, like the magician's hat, taking out pigeons and cheap streamers and polyester ribbons. It's a lot more. So I just thought that, you know, you probably have some pretty amazing stories that are not connected to the Latin failed description of what it is. And those are the stories that that actually is the glue right here, right now between us. It's those stories that we share that we both know don't fulfill the Latin description. Fail. Thank God my books are all here to rummage. So that's why I thought you should tell us a story. I think that what you and I think of as stories is different to what we've been taught as a story. For instance, the Humpty Dumpty story is an idea. Alice in Wonderland, Through the Rabbit Hole, the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. The Mad Hatter's Tea Party is my favorite because it allows for chaos, it allows for creativity, it allows for anything to go and flow, and it all somehow Brownian motion connects. And there is a system in that chaos. Nothing breaks, nobody dies, nothing falls apart. And even if a cup or a saucer breaks, it's part of the process. Like kintsugi, like the Japanese pottery. You just glue it back and you do it in gold and you say, wow, isn't that gorgeous? It's broken. Look, fantastic. So even things that break, the beauty is there's no fear. The Mad Hatter's Tea Party doesn't take into account fear. And that's what Alice learns, that all gravity-free, fear-free. Khufu's boat is fear-free. Noah's Ark. What the Cirque du Soleil people do. I sent you this phenomenal picture of this very sinewy, almost invisible, like dragonfly's wings, that boat that they're dancing around. That whole thing floats, fearless. So I thought, you know, I know we must, these are the stories that we share without actually talking about them, without putting words to them. So I thought today would be a great time to sort of, yes, push you over the precipice a little bit and say, share one of your magical stories. So that's my context to that question. Your turn.
I am sharing silence, what is beyond the audible and the power of what we call a storyteller, shaman, shapeshifter, the people who live in between the realms. So absolutely, you're absolutely, I fully align with, there's no return to what we were, but there are people who move between the realms and come back to re-energize, to, and again, I keep these words with RE in the beginning in English are extremely powerful for me because they suggest a knowing that, like we've been saying, it's already in our bodies. But we happen to be in this physical world. And it is collapsing in on itself. The trajectory of the Kali Yuga is to get more and more dense material. And it's in the space that the magic that you and I are talking about blooms. So here we are in particular bodies that we are inhabiting right now. They are our habitat and we are in them. But the experience of leaving the body without even a spaceship, just out of body experiences, seeing from a place that you've never seen before. I've had those experiences since I was a child. I had no idea why I was floating around above the field where I was lying. I mean, like, how did that happen? And it just happened. And when you come back, that's why the eternal return. Time and space as we know it, the age we might be in this body, are meaningless. And all around us are other embodiments, not in the physical Homo sapien body, but the plants, the flowers that bloom, the animals, the rocks, all the physical manifestations that are also sprouting out of the earth. We've got that knowledge, we have that story. To hear it, like you hear the cries of agony of animals, cruelty, what they're suffering, and you listen. So I do believe that when you listen to other voices, when you align with the trajectory that you experienced in the ring of fire, no less, it burns away what's not essential. So the return is with that wisdom in our bodies. And it's not the same as a ring of fire 100 years ago. All a Jugalbandi, a balancing. And to listen and also to make the right sound so that it's not just when we're talking heard by other humans, but the rocks and the trees and the animals are all listening. And whatever we're building is a place for them, not just us humans. No, that's my story. That's my story.
Two things. Do you remember John Cage did
Yes.
9-minute at Cardiff?
Thought of it. Thought
He
of
had
it.
a full orchestra, and for 9 minutes or 30 minutes, for some insane amount of time, he played nothing. And he recorded that. And in the early 90s, the Guggenheim Soho, before it turned into the store for Prada, which was just horrific, the Guggenheim Soho had a show of his work. It was called the Holy Woolly Circus. I think we went to see it because I was at Parsons in those days, those years. And I'm not sure if it was with you. I think it was with you. It may have been Madeline or it might have been Stephanie, but we went as a group, and the entire exhibition was constantly changing. So the ladders were always up, the spackling was being done, pictures, drawings were being removed, and the entire elevation of the Guggenheim. So we are used to hanging art at eye level, at a very standard. But he had wanted it to be all over the place. So you walk into this, it didn't matter which day you went, there was always either work being removed, work being put up, or work that was there in the interim waiting to be removed. And there were holes in the wall, and there were people working. So the entire exhibition's sense of place was constantly shifting. And that for me is such a poignant definition of place as boomerang. So was it the Australian Aborigines or the New Zealand Maoris who created the boomerang? Because that has a sound as it moves through the air. But just the idea, how did somebody one day decide that we need a boomerang? And it doesn't have a re in front of it. It doesn't start with a re. It's not a return object or a re-energized flying object. It's a boomerang. And they may have an Aborigine term for it or a Maori term for it, because I feel like it was created by one of the indigenous people in that region. Maybe it was Africa, I'm not sure, but somehow it makes me think that it was from there. And I wonder how that was conceived. Because what you're describing, which is this return to something called place, is that body that sends out these sounds, these messages, these energies. And like a homing pigeon, like that boomerang, it comes home to this place. But the Aborigines did. So Saira, thank you so much. So the Australian Aborigines created that. Saira is one of our family members, Cube Editor. She lives in New York, is in the city. Saira, I hope you're masked and safe. So I think that the idea of storytelling as the energy and the sound of a boomerang would be really something fantastic for us to build into whatever framework we're building for this sharing of stories. And the new narrative that Noor talked about, that there has to be a new narrative, an alternative to the books that are just merely rhetoric. I would have used something a little bit more facetious to describe it. He was very polite and called it rhetoric. I'm not going to say it. I'm tempted to, but I'm not going to say it. But I think that it's sort of borderline vulgar, and I don't think this is the appropriate space for it, but some other day, maybe I can write it in a paper one day. So that rhetoric, that the entire subcontinent and the countries today, so if we look at landmass, we're looking at Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. This is the subcontinent that has been juggled and bounced around this rhetoric. So I think he's right that we need to recreate a new narrative. And I think that if you and I can find a way to create a place which is liquid, so that all of us can be on this storytelling journey together on a boat, on Khufu's boat, where there is a substance underneath us, but it's not water necessarily, but it allows us buoyancy, and it allows us the movement, and it allows us to be afraid and then to not be afraid. So, the waves, sine and cosine waves, they all do this. Differential equations do this. So it's not something that's not scientific and it's just poetic and romantic. It's very scientific and very much how sound travels, how light travels. So all of these things, frequencies, these are all sine and cosine wave formats. It would be great to develop something that's equally scientific as poetic and then string those two together. The Cirque du Soleil people, they know the alignment of their body, the machines. They know exactly how to project themselves physically, how to make things happen, how to get others to get involved in their movement and then let them go. So they defy gravity only because they have understood every microgram of their bodies, their bone structure, the movement of the water, calisthenics. So that's, I think, the platform we want to give is an architectural digital version of this. This is the story that we should be building, I think, would be really exciting. This place as boomerang.
Yes, yes. Place. I never have imagined it as anything except movement and seeing, experiencing, sensing, smelling, tasting the change in seasons in the Lenape bioregion this spring, not going in and out of New York. There isn't a day, there isn't an hour that something hasn't moved. And it's astounding. Right. Our vegetable garden, the family went away this weekend and I was tending it. The peas grew right in front of my eyes. The weather has been so amazing. Wow. And then my grandson came back. They were only gone for 3 days, but it was during the summer solstice and the Ring of Fire. He grew. A human being grew. I mean, I was like, how? So we can't catch it is, to me, the most important thing. Yeah. And that's what we've been trying to do. And poetry that's music, poetry that includes the silence, I experience as reaching beyond what we have been able to depict in science. But that's not a limitation of science, it's the limitation of us. We've reduced measure down to, in fact, I remember the gold standard is actually a measure, a weight. And somebody got it out of wherever it's been kept for a long time and discovered it had actually lost some weight. So the gold standard was not even something that didn't change. And the idea of change and what it implies, the spring did not move through its music these last 2 months in the lockdown for me to witness or me to participate in, to do both. It has its own unfolding and refolding back into the fall and resting. But we don't know anything about that rhythm. We don't know anything about it. And what's so magical about poetry and sound, pure sound, whether it's the Sufis or in my Sangha, the Mexicans with their guitars and the sounds out of our throats, they move your body and you start to experience these rhythms that aren't measurable, but they are real. So collapsing what we call science and poetry, I think, into, or it's my hope, it's my alignment right now, but it's not, I'm not holding on to that line. You know, in fact, in Buddhism, don't they call it you're walking on the tightrope, just like the acrobats in Cirque du Soleil. Incredible. Every time I see them live, I leave feeling that I'm jumping up, you know, defying gravity. They communicate this extraordinary, like you said, every cell is in their awareness. And I had a student once who was from a circus family. I can't remember, she was from the Cirque du Soleil. She came back to school, and she would hop around the room and, you know, turn upside down. And, you know, we were all searching for why we are here on this earth. And I had the students return to what they did around the age of 11 or 12, when their whole body is changing. There's the possibility that at that moment your hands know what your fate is. So this was quite a while ago, I was saying, you have to be prepared to learn something totally new. So even then, I felt that we were in a disaster, out of alignment with the stars. And that half the semester they had to learn something they wanted to know and were doing when their body was changing. And it had to be learned from somebody who was a master, a living master. So a couple of them convinced me somehow or other to learn from a living master. There was one Chinese student, and he wanted to talk to his grandfather about the origins of calligraphy and the whole manuscript. So I said, yes, of course. Go online. Your grandfather knows things. But my point is, it's in our bodies. This is why we're here at this moment. Any of you who are listening, how did you end up here? It's like Zen has created this ship, this Egyptian ship, and it was huge. We're all fit into it. But the point is, like the circus performers, they use whatever is material to defy the material. So that's what I feel. The material is getting denser. We know this. The Kali Yuga, things are going to get worse. But we don't have to be dragged down. I mean, just feel the space when you breathe, because the spirit's coming in. Big breath. I have it come down. Breathe it in, and breathe in all the pain, the sorrow, all the things I want to leave behind. And then it goes out and it's gone. The earth will absorb it. I don't have to do anything but cry. And the crying is exactly what I felt when I first heard the sound, O-M-A, Om. And I felt I am home. I am home. And home is going to be, in your story, absolutely different from each of us. Each of us. And the polarity or the hatred or the contradiction, the paradox, how can you have difference and not have agreement? Woo! Fabulous! I don't have to agree with Zen no matter what he says. No, I am not. I am not. So that'll make me speak even louder than I speak now. And I'm told that I often scare people. Well, watch out, because Zen is standing, in all these places I don't know. And like I've been saying to him, Pegasus is beating down the stall door because nightmares are riding in the night. And a mare originally was both male and female, beyond the gender differences. So riding in the night, not as fear, but go Pegasus, go. I'm there. I'm part of you. And I want to know all the things that Zen knows, so he won't keep saying to me, do your share. And he's absolutely right. I'm, God knows how I got here. And I'm sorry to take anyone's sacred name in vain. I did not mean that. I just mean I have no idea how I got here. And I have no idea where we're going. So it's
but you have just answered the most important question that we've been struggling with, is what are we going to put into this? How is this boat going to be constructed? And you are the first participant. You are my first student in that sense, because we need to get X number of people like you to these places without Pegasus. So basically, this is perfect, because the boomerang is going to be, you will be the voice of everybody else who's on here who wants to go to these places and haven't been able to. And you send me a set of questions that said, for this, what are the experiences that you have when you go to these places? If I know what your questions are, they could be similar to other people's questions who haven't been to these places. In that sense, I will not be projecting my assumptions and presumptions on what I think they would want to know. You can actually say, look, here are the things that I would want to know. And boom, there's our structure. There's our framework. Questions, a series of questions.
My feet are bare, and I am on a wooden floor in an old stone barn. And it was hand renovated by my son-in-law and his family with their bare hands and their tools, which sometime I will show you all on the wall here. Their tools were all in their hands. And like the Sufi musicians, I remember listening to the group that you linked me to, and being told that the lead of the group was, quote, not literate. And all I can say is, wow, great. No wonder he was making those sounds, because he has a clear line. So questions. My feet are tingling on the floor, through the wood, down through where the cows were in this barn, because I'm in the hayloft, and then into the earth. There is not the basements of previous buildings. It's not like when I'm sitting on the wood floor in Parsons in New York. We have to go through a lot. So the message I'm getting from my feet, from the earth, is yes, questions, if they come from the real curiosity of the person asking them.
Yeah.
So again, embodied, wanting to know, coming out of the person who, like myself, reaching to you because you've been there. But the earth is saying you have to go yourself, ultimately.
Mm.
And the reason is I will have a experience, even if I'm sitting on the ground right next to you. We aren't the same.
Yes.
We aren't the same.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
what is wonderful
that's true.
is the communication through the music, through so many ways that the shapers, the people we call the artists, the people who hear the invisible, have given birth to. And that's, maybe that's what Pythagoras meant. The harmony of the universe is not standard symmetry or everything matches. It's all these different voices together making music. The question is the horse we've been talking about. Feeling the desire. And to me, that is what shapes the question. Because I hear all the time the wheels going of students, especially, who've been so limited in giving the space to experience what they are feeling. The questions so often are being formed while I'm speaking. They're not hearing me. They're trying to think. This is what's called analytical thinking. They aren't listening at all. So listening and hearing, and how that happened, the pandemic hitting in the middle of while I was teaching, transformed a group of students in a way that I could have never imagined, because they had to go home or go someplace away, and all of them went to someplace like the ocean or the mountains, someplace where they could realize they are the earth. What's moving through us is the air that the earth soils, and the water and the sun as energy, earth, air, fire, and water. They are making you when you stand on the earth. So I think it's the desire, the real desire I have to know what you know, but to know it as a answer. And maybe that's not the right word. As home, as being. Yes, I live, and I live vigorously, and I die every time I breathe out, but to be, and to realize why everyone in the pandemic wants to get out to the beaches, to the oceans, to the mountains, to the grass. I spoke to a friend of mine yesterday in New York, and she had her baby of about 2 months, born in the pandemic, on the earth in Prospect Park. And she named her baby Apollo. And Apollo is the singing, whether it's oh my God, Orpheus singing. I don't want to confuse this by continuing to say the word return, because I agree with you. We are not coming back, but we do.
No, we don't want to
sing. We do sing. And Orpheus went after, he went into death. And what he discovered was life. And he sang, and he sang. especially if you hear the poetry of Rilke, the sonnets to Orpheus. I don't know in Greek how the story sounds, but the translators, Joanna Macy, into English of Rilke, all the things that are so hard in my mind in the German sound, which was the language of he spoke, as well as French and Italian, but he wrote in German. She transformed, it's usually said translated, and her own husband had died, and she began translating Rilke as a way to heal. So whatever that word is, when you come back, and not back again, when you can speak from that place, then I think other people feel it. And I have felt it in you.
Right. So, yes, you do need to come here. But for all the people who, there's no denying that Egypt and Mohenjo-daro you have to do with me before I will be ready to do anything else. Those two places have to happen together. And today I was looking at the drawings of the temple for Queen Hatshepsut, which is right on the western side of Thebes, the Valley of the Kings. I don't know why. I was just looking at those drawings. And I think yesterday when we spoke, you mentioned echo. So from the questions, I will never be able to give anybody the answers to their own unique experience. But as Malia says, that even those who couldn't go away were more aware of their natural surroundings, at least we can suggest directions. We can suggest types of sounds. We can suggest types of light, no light, types of temperature, types of environments where they can go in their own places and try and recreate the experience as an echo, as a ripple. And I think that idea sat really well with me when you mentioned the idea of echoes and ripples, because there's one thing to follow the same footprints, and even if we're setting our feet in the footprints of the person in front, you will still have your own experience. But the real fun would be, the real game and the play in this would be to get them to understand the skill of creating those footprints in their place. Their own footprints. So what kind of shoe does one wear? What kind of earth does one need to step into? Because if you're on a wet cement floor, you will leave a footprint. But if it's dry, it's too late. If it's soft, there will be no footprint because you'll sink down to your ankles. And then when you pull it out, it will close. So even making of a footprint has to be the right kind of consistency of earth. There's sand dunes that will leave no footprints. And this flat, hard desert like Sindh, like outside of Karachi, that leaves no footprints because it's dirt and it's grit. So if we can show them how to make those footprints, even leaving that footprint and looking back at it is amazing. I think that would be, so there won't be answers, but there would be skills or echoes and ripples of saying, here's how you can create a simulacrum and tell us how you feel and tell us what happened and share your experiences. And maybe through a series of 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 or a million, we will generate a pattern from it. So if we can share a series of how to make your own footprint in your own place, China, Japan, Taiwan, Korea, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, Iran, Spain, 100 countries, 10 people per country, 10 students per country, and we bring in this information and it's layered, we could pull out the unifying story between all of these people.
Well, as you know, and well, WELL, reaching down into the well of the place where I am, that the pandemic threw me out of New York City, in the land of the Lenape. So I heard them. They're still here. But I wondered what their creation story is, what their oral presence is, the heritage you're talking about. And
Right.
realized that as far as Western thinking, they appeared in the 1700s, when they were discovered by the West. And luckily, there are stories still told among the Lenape, remembered from them. But as we've been saying, movement is life. And we all have been, I think, it's so wonderful. We all came out of Africa, what we call Africa, that continent. And, well, if the Lenape originated, the human form that now we identify with that word, how'd they get here from Africa? So I basically, the questions that came to me were the first footprints. Because then I discovered, well, if you come out of Africa, you go through the subcontinent and what we call the Far East. And now it's pretty fundamentally agreed. There used to be land connecting to what we call Alaska. The Bering Strait was land, not water. And these people coming out of Africa went across the Bering Strait. And we're not talking about in a month. We're talking about, hundreds, thousands of years. They lived on that land mass. And then when they came into the North American continent, some of them came to this whole region, New York State, New England, the Lenape. And that's how they started. So in relation to your leaving footprints, I think when we start to wonder and not demand, but just, I wonder how the Lenape got here. The footprints are here. They may not be visible, like sometimes archaeologists do find fossilized a footprint, but in our bodies. How did I end up here? I was born on the prairie, but lo and behold, a lot of the vegetation is the same. And I won't even go into the whole story about the mounds that were where I was born that turned out to have been an off branch of the Anasazi. So the scattered fragments of my dissolved self are.
And on that note,
Yes.
I'm going to interrupt rudely. We're all
Yes.
out of time, but I will leave one question for everybody here. Right now, where am I? Am I in Pennsylvania or are you in Pakistan? For this conversation, where is our place? And that's going to be Khudafis from me, because we need to. Are you sitting in my living room or am I sitting in your loft? And that I'm going to throw out for everybody. Are you with us? Am I sitting in New York with you? Thank you very much. Take care of yourselves. Thank you, Jean. Till next time, Khudafis from Karachi, for whatever it's worth.